Cool. So let's take a look at what the coronavirus looks like around the world at the moment. And yeah, if you overlay this with the transport map, it's basically a one-to-one match. Um, and with places like India, they're probably massively underreported simply because they've not done the testing. So this is another thing. You've got to take some of these numbers with a pinch of salt in that if you don't do any testing, you're not going to report any coronavirus cases. And so there was this thing that, for America, I think it was up to the beginning of March, there'd only been 1,000 tests for the entire of the country or something. We're going to take a look at what the spread rates look like. And I'm going to take China as a first example. And I modeled the China data for my very first video. And from that, in fact, let's take a quick look at that data. So this was the very first data that I modeled from China. And from the very first data point, this is when they'd quarantined a city of 10 million people. I don't think they were quarantining cities of 10 million people to suppress the spread, this is the thing. Viruses aren't like news stories. They're going to spread where there is contact between people. You can suppress the news all you want. The people will still get the virus, which is why when they're not making a secret of quarantining a city of 10 million people, a city the size of New York or London, they were obviously taking it seriously. Anyway, so what do we got? This is the actual modeling that I did of the data at the time. And I got a wild spread rate of the virus. You want to model it in the early days, really, because this is the sort of wild spread rate. And I was getting a wild spread rate of 1.45-ish for the early spread of the virus, which is very comparable to the numbers that I got for the wild spread rate in America. Now, you got to take some of these numbers with a pinch of salt, not necessarily because people are lying about the numbers or anything like that, but because when China was first doing this, they had to work out what the hell the virus was that was killing people and develop a test for it. And so the ramp up in the early days, a lot of it is really, it's a question of detection rather than, is that the actual spread of the virus? So there's multiple factors here. All data like this comes with degrees of uncertainty to it, but in science, that doesn't faze us too much. It's still a good guide for the eye as to where you are on these curves and what to expect. So with China, they quarantined the city of 10 million by the time they had about 500 cases. And sometime afterwards, they start going into a linear regime, which is about the sort of time frame that you would expect. This looks quicker than I would expect. Usually you expect about 2 weeks before it starts going linear. That's roughly what you expect. And then it tails off fairly quickly after that. Actually, no, 1 week. No, this is about right. It goes linear after about 1 week, and then it tails off after 2 weeks if you got perfect quarantine. The China data looked almost exactly what you would expect for a virus that was spreading exponentially and for which had a quarantine put in place almost immediately. Which is why, I'm when people are saying, but China, they lie. You're a fool if you believe the Chinese data. Well, why? I've looked at it. It looks credible. The spread rates are almost exactly what you get everywhere else. The spread rate, the wild spread rate of the virus is almost exactly what I modeled in America. So what did they fake all of this early data, full in the knowledge that a month and a half later, when the same thing was happening in America, that you would also get the same spread rate of the virus. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just one of the most prevalent comments about, um, China's look, well, they don't look strange to me, but yeah, no chance the Chinese numbers are undercounted or anything. We should definitely believe China. Like, who said that? And yeah, the China data is false. Well, why? It's got exactly the same spread rate as the US viral data at the beginning. So what, you think that this is all fake? That just so you know, the city of 10 million was quarantined almost from the first day that they start this data. And about the time it's linear, they'd worked out that it'd spread to other provinces. That's what this huge jump in here is. So they basically quarantined about 60 million people somewhere in this region. Right? And this is more or less exactly what you would expect. This is what if you quarantined everywhere, that's more or less what you would expect. And it's also more or less exactly what you see in other countries, like Italy. They entered the quarantine, and about 2 weeks later, or so a week or so later, they're now in a more linear regime, which is what you expect. I mean, I don't understand what you find unbelievable about the China data. I mean, other than that China's a dictatorship and therefore you should take the numbers with a pinch of salt. Well, yeah. But then you take a look at all the internal consistency checks for the data, and it hits all of them. It's got the right spread rate. It had the right spread rate before we had spread rates in other countries. So yeah, give me a reason why this data looks wrong to you. Anyway, so let's now, with that in mind, take a look at some other countries around the world. So, I mean, you could say the same thing about all of these. I don't believe the government, but so Iran, they've got steady growth, which is kind of weird. Yeah, again, you can get weird artifacts like this as a mismatch of detection getting better and infection going down. Right? So even if people are being completely honest, you can get things like that. But what you expect is exponent. Then sometime after, when you apply the quarantine, it goes linear. And then after another couple of weeks, it bends over kind of like that. And now they're in China, they're talking about relaxing the quarantine, seeing as they're now down to, looks like 100 new cases per day, if you believe their numbers. But, you don't quarantine 60 million people and then talk about relaxing the quarantine if it's not actually something that's likely to be happening. Anyway, Germany is arguably linear at the moment. They're getting 3,000 new cases per day. Spain is by far the worst in Europe at the moment. They're kind of in the exponent portion of the curve. That's where it can, every 3 days, you basically double the number of cases that you get. So, Spain is going to be at least as bad as Italy. And the UK is also probably comfortably in the exponent phase at the moment, which means you've got another week of the exponent phase before it really goes into linear. So it's probably going to get pretty bad in the UK. The more so seeing as the response for the UK was massively botched, that if somewhere around here they were sort of saying, well, yeah, maybe practice social distancing, but they kept all of the schools open. And then somewhere around here they were sort of saying, well, okay, we're closing the schools and, everyone should avoid, groups of people. And basically everyone ignored it. and treated it like a holiday. And everything that I see from the UK shows that people aren't taking the quarantine seriously, which basically means you're going to be in the experiment phase till you start taking the quarantine seriously. So the UK is probably going to be pretty bad. Germany is arguably already in the linear regime. They took the quarantine seriously early. France looks pretty bad as well. France, I know now is in sort of complete lockdown. That I talked to someone from France. They said that Paris at the moment, if you've not got a good reason to be on the streets, it's sort of boom, instant $100 fine. You essentially your dictatorship type powers. No appeals, no paperwork. €100 fine, boom, done. But America is by far the worst looking place in the world at the moment, and with no real sense that the entire country really ought to be on full lockdown from now for at least 2 weeks. And in the meantime, you've got Trump saying that actually now in 2 weeks we'll be opening the country, which is just so what's going to happen to this curve is when you're on the exponent, it's of 2 weeks till it starts plateauing off. And if you open the country back up, then it's just going to resume the exponent from the number of cases that you've got. So it would be just the dumbest thing ever to try and continue business as normal. Even as it stands, the hospitals where there are infected areas are already basically overwhelmed and depleted all their medical supplies. And everywhere else is likely to follow in a few weeks if you don't take the lockdown seriously. And for me, I've got doubts whether America is actually sort of capable of doing this. With the UK, they were, it's just this sort of attitude that there isn't the realization that this is something different. And with a spread like that in America, so this is the thing. In America, I lived in America for over a decade. So, and I've lived in New Mexico, I've lived in Virginia, I've lived in upstate New York. So I got a reasonable feel for the sort of culture of the place. And there's this sort of attitude that the minimalistic government that should stay out of your life, which is actually quite nice. But honestly, at this point, you're actually much better off with an authoritarian regime that can actually just lock down the country, because then you can contain the spread of a virus like this. Now, whether I'm right or not, time will tell. But, America is on course to, by tomorrow, it's going to be, or 2 days at tops, it's going to be the second most infected country just look at the reported new cases per day. America is at about 10,000 new cases per day. Italy is 5,000, maybe less cases per day. And China, they're at 100 new cases per day. That's and this is another reason why don't you believe that it's completely out of control in China? Well, if it was completely out of control in China, from this point, the entire country would be infected by now if they were lying about the numbers. There would be absolutely, dictatorship or not, there would be zero chance that you could actually cover it up. These seem plausible numbers. But America, if you've got a third of the population who just believes everything is fake news and don't believe authority figures or the experts. It's those experts that are just lying to you. Well, remember what I was in the video that I put up on my main channel? You've got to get the spread of the virus down by about 90% to get it under control in a month, that sort of thing. If a third of your population don't take the spread of the virus seriously, that's basically impossible. You can only ever crop down the spread of the virus by 2/3, which means that if a third of the population don't take it seriously, you can't stop the spread of the virus. It's that simple. It'll eventually just burn through the whole population. Now, thankfully, there are places like New York where they really, the mayor there seems to have woken up too late, but at least woken up to the scope of the problem. He knows that he's in one of these sort of experiment type curves, and even though he's had the city in quarantine for days at the moment, he knows the spike is going to come days after you implemented the quarantine, because the disease has to cook up in people, and that takes about 2 weeks. So they're basically preparing to be completely overwhelmed at the moment. And he put out these pleading messages that, that they're basically ahead of the curve, and that many other places in America will follow soon after. So yeah, that's an appraisal of what you might expect from the spread of the virus in the coming weeks. Not a rosy picture, but yeah, America is on track to, it's only like 3 days or something at the moment, and it will have had the most coronavirus cases in the world. It would be nice. This was always my grievance with Trump. Wasn't, that he was politically incorrect or any of that thing. It's that he wasn't competent. And this more or less shows exactly it. There are times when you can get away with essentially being the host of The Apprentice. That, you have the what's it called? The business image, not the business image. The corporate image. You project the correct corporate image, the brand image. Yeah, you get the right brand image and you repeat it again and again, that we're the best, that everything is going to get so much better. We have the best people working on this. People didn't believe that it could be done in such a short period of time until we did it. Doesn't really matter whether it's any of it's true or not. That's great for selling things and great for image and all that sort of thing. But viruses don't care at all about any of that. There's only 2 factors that count: how many people you come into contact with, and how infectious is the virus. The virus is going to have no respect or whatsoever for your claims that it's all under control and it's going to be better and we're going to open the country in a couple of weeks. There's only one thing that you can sensibly do to stop the spread of the virus, and that's to minimize the contact between people. So yeah, with that, I wish you good luck, and I'll see you next time.